Welcome to this week's Gig Diary. These are the videos where I try and give you an idea of what it's like to be a professional musician working in the UK. Now, coming up in this week's Gig Diary, first of all, a non-disclosure agreement, some classic solos, a picture of a horse, and some top looping advice. I'm about to click the loop switch. So before the first gig that I'm going to show you, I did a little bit of a vlog. I filmed myself just before I went, so I'm going to show you that to kick things off. I've got a gig today. It's a Tuesday, which is a very unusual day to have a gig. Well, certainly a function gig, which is what I'm doing. I think it might be a wedding. And I've got some studio work to do first, which is what's going on my screen behind here. So I've got to get this done, then I've got to leave about half three. It's about 100 miles away, which on a Tuesday night will probably take ages because the traffic is terrible in this country most of the time. Yeah, and I'm going to take my Quad Cortex as my effects board today. There's an amp there, there's an amp and cables and everything. I just have to take my guitar and effects board, and I normally take my standard pedal board, but I'm going to try my Quad Cortex today, just for a change. It's a different amp to what I normally would use. It's a Fender Hot Rod DeVille or Deluxe. So I thought I might try my Quad Cortex for it, see what it sounds like. So I should get some footage later. So the gig that I was about to leave for was in the New Forest, which is a lovely part of the world. It's on the south coast of England, in the UK. And there's all kind of wild horses running wild. So here's the picture of the horse again. That was why I was showing a picture of a horse. It wasn't completely irrelevant. So what was unusual on this gig, when I arrived, I was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now what it turned out was that the people getting married were celebrities, and I think they'd sold their story or the wedding to be covered in Hello magazine or something along those lines. Now, as to whether I'm now allowed to reveal whose wedding it was, I don't know, because it's actually been in the news. It was on the Hello magazine's website. Now, strictly speaking, I can't tell you who it was, but all I can say is as the band started playing, all people started to come dancing onto the dance floor and had a very nice night. It's quite interesting. I have played to a few famous people while I've been doing these gigs, and the most famous probably I'd say was Prince William and Prince Harry. I played to them both at the same time. I mean, whether they listened to it or not I don't know, but I played at Sandhurst, which is the military academy where army officers go to train, and when they pass out, which I believe is the expression they use for graduating rather than collapsing drunk at the end of the evening, they have a big party at the end of each term, and I did it a few times, but I think the last time I did it, Prince William and Harry were there. It was Harry passing out and William was there as well. And at one point I was stood about 10 feet away from them in the bar, which was very surreal as they got such familiar faces. I've also played in front of Jimmy Page twice, and Roger Daltrey was there one of the times. One of the weirdest ones was I played for virtually the whole cast of EastEnders, which if you're not in the UK, it's a soap opera, a weekly soap opera, probably the most popular one, and the people on it, because they're on television the entire time, you feel like you know them, they're so familiar. And it was absolutely peculiar. It was in a small golf club, and all these incredibly familiar faces were all sat watching us play. Anyway, it was a very surreal experience. So back to the gig. Now, unfortunately, both the batteries in my GoPro had died. They didn't charge properly, and that's the camera I normally use to film these gigs. I was anxious to get some footage of this gig, not because of the celebrities there, and I'd already signed something to say that I wouldn't film them anyway, but I was using my Quad Cortex in a completely different way to usual. I was using it in place of my pedal board, as I explained earlier. Now, because I didn't have a stand for it, it was just sat on the floor, so the sound is a bit weird, but bear with it. I think at least you can hear it. It's better than not having anything, I suppose. Now, here's a little bit of footage I filmed just of the setup of my Quad Cortex going into the amp that I was using, just so you can see what that was. And now I've filmed myself giving a little bit of a walkthrough of the Quad Cortex preset. So over to me earlier. This is the preset I created after the gig. I used one called Jade Pedalboard, which was just an FX with no amp preset, and I kind of based it off of that. And I've got some of my own pedal board that I've captured on here. So I'll start off with the EP booster set to 1/4. Then I go into the built-in bubble wire, and that's set with the expression pedal when it's heel down to be bypassed. Then you bring it forward and it activates it, heel down again, turns it off, so it means you don't have to give assign a separate foot switch to it. Then I've got a capture of my Keeley modified blues driver. Then I'm using the built-in pedal here, which is also the built-in model of the exotic pedal, which I can't remember what that is, but it's made by Exotic RC Booster or something. I'd have to look that up, but I like the sound of that one, and it's a little bit more gainy than my captures, so I tend to use that in tandem with one of the other ones for, you know, some of the higher gain sounds. Then I've got my capture of my Keeley modified blues driver. Then I realised I could do with some chorus, because there's a few 80s things we do that have got chorus. I haven't used this on the gig yet. I'm going to be using that later this week, but I've gone through a few of the chorus sounds, and I've gone for the mono dream chorus because I'm running it in mono into the amp. So I'll see how I get on with that one. I might change it. I'll report on my next gig diary when I've used it, whether that one works or not. And then down here I've got a tape delay. Add some delay to solos now and again. Now I've just got it set so it can be synced by tapping, the old tap tempo thing. And then finally I've got a spring reverb on here. Now the amp that I plug into with that band has got spring reverb on, but all of the settings on the top, they've all rubbed off. The amp's been used so much that the settings have all disappeared. Oh, excuse me. Oh, there was a little insect running across my Quad Cortex there, seems to have disappeared. So I decided to put this spring reverb on here, and it sounded quite nice. So that's basically all that setup is. So it's pretty simple, and I use it in stomp mode on gig view. So it's kind of set up a bit like my standard pedal board, really. And as I do the sets this week with the band, there might be some other effects that I want to use, and I've got 2 spare slots which I can use. So I'll see how I get on, and I shall report back on this one. So that's similar to the preset I was using on this gig. It's the same drive sounds and everything, so you can still hear it. So just here's a few clips. Now this first one is from that Justin Timberlake song, so this is just a clean sound. There's probably not a lot going on with the Quad Cortex, so you can just hear what the amp sounds like and the guitar, so try and get an idea. And then there's a couple of solos, 2 of the solos, very few solos that I actually kind of know note for note. Not that I play them exactly note for note on these, so I made a couple of slight errors or changes, shall we say. So here we go, just a little bit of footage from the gig. The next gig. Now I've covered this gig before. This is my regular bar gig that I very much enjoy. Now on this week I decided to just take my 335. If you'd have seen last week's gig diary, you'd have seen I took 335 and a Strat to a gig, and I start with the 335 and then I soon put it down and default to the Strat because that's where I feel most comfortable. So I'm quite keen to get more used to using my 335. It's a great sound, but because I'm so comfortable with my Fender guitars, I tend to go back to them whenever possible. So if I don't take it with me, then I can't use it. So the whole gig I did on the 335. So this first clip, I think I've shown myself soloing over this tune before. We always start with this one and I just like it, but it sounds slightly different this one. I did a slightly different take on it. So this is Valerie. this next song, with the band, we like to do songs out the charts. They've normally been out the charts about 40 years, but this one, it might even still be in the charts. It's Silk Sonic, the Bruno Mars band, and it's Smoking Out the Window. So these are some nice changes to play over. So a bit jazzy, this one, I suppose. So I'll show you this one. This next one, I think I've definitely shown myself playing this solo before on my YouTube channel. This is All Right Now. Now, I've been playing this solo for about 30 years, and it wasn't until I got my 335, which is the first Gibson I've ever owned, which has the shorter scale length, of course, that when I started doing the Paul Kossoff vibrato, which I've always been able to kind of do, that it really made sense, and it kind of sounded much more like when he does it, and it was much easier to do, which must just be to do with the shorter scale length. Now, why it took me 30 years to work that one out, as I've always played it on Fenders and struggled slightly. Anyway, so I thought the vibrato, particularly the end of the solo here, sounded pretty close to the Paul Kossoff vibrato. So have a look at this. This is All Right Now. Now on to the final gig. This was a gig of two halves. Now, as I think I've explained in one of my previous gig diaries, I've started using my backing tracks again with my electric guitar. I vowed years ago to never use the backing tracks because I didn't like doing it. Plus at the time I had to carry my amp, my electric pedal board, a big mini disc player. But these days I realised I already had my Quad Cortex plugged in for my acoustic guitar, so I could just plug my electric guitar straight into that, and all my backing tracks were on my phone, so it was pretty easy. All I had to do was take my electric guitar with me. And the first one I did, I really enjoyed it, so I've done it again. Firstly, I'm going to show you a bit from the acoustic set. Now, I'm not going to give you a walkthrough of the Quad Cortex preset here because I've done an entire video on that, so I'm going to loop to that here. So this is using the hybrid mode where you use the Quad Cortex as a kind of MIDI controller to control itself. And all you need is a tiny little MIDI cable that you plug from the out to the in. But if you check that video out, it's very cool. You can use the looping and you can use scenes all at the same time, so check out that video. But what I haven't done really is explained as I go along how I set up a loop. So what I've done here, I've got a bit of footage of me playing Free Falling and how I set up the loop while I'm singing, and I put a little bit of myself in the corner of the screen explaining what I'm doing as we go along, a bit of running commentary. So let me show you that first, and this explains how I use that preset, which you can go and check out in that other video. So I'm about to click the loop switch to loop the rhythm. There we go. So now I'm recording the rhythm guitar part. I'm going to click it again to repeat. It's not recording at this point. Now I'm going to switch over to the bass scene, which puts the octave on. And I'm playing it, but it's not recording yet, and at the end of this section I'm going to hit it again, so it's now overdubbing. Right, now it's overdubbing. When I finish this, I'm going to switch back to the other scene and put the drums down, because it loops around it overdubs again. Now I switch off the overdub, and it's now looping the bass, drums and rhythm part. That's it. I'm going to fast forward to the solo, show you how I can solo over this part. Now this next acoustic song, there's no looping involved in this, but I just thought this was interesting. This is a song that I love. This song, it's Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan, and I haven't played it for absolutely years, and there's tons and tons of lyrics in it, and it baffles me how your mind works. I mean, if I'm trying to learn a new song, it takes me ages to remember the lyrics, but this song, which I probably haven't sung in, I don't know, 20 years, all those millions of lyrics just came out of my mind and I could sing most of them. I didn't get all 4 verses word for word, but certainly this first verse was pretty close and it reminded me what a good song it was. So here's a little clip of that. It's my favourite one though. Once upon a time you dressed so fine, threw the bumps of dime in your prime, didn't you? People called, said beware dog, you're bound to fall. You thought they was all kidding you. You used to laugh about everybody who was hanging out. Now you don't talk so loud. Now you don't seem so proud about having to be surrounded your next week. Tell me, how does it feel? Then I switched over to electric, so I'm going to show you another bit of footage and a walkthrough of how I set my Quad Cortex up for this solo gig. Here we go. Now this is the preset I created. Oh, there's that insect again. There it is. What have we got here? Get off my Quad Cortex, you cheeky thing. Oh, it might not be an insect, it's a spider actually. It's an arachnid. Go away, arachnid. Anyway, I digress. Hope it doesn't change any of my settings. I created this preset after the gig. It's similar to the one I was using, but I just refined it slightly. And like the pedal board only one I was using earlier, I've got the same top line here. I've got my EP booster, my keyly modified blues driver and my what do you call it, tube screamer, and then I've got the exotic in between again. They're all set similarly on both presets, and I've got the bubble wire again with the preset set there, and on top of that I've got a tremolo patch which I didn't use the other day, but there's definitely some things I would like to use that in. And then I've got a rotary thing that on my backing tracks, which I've started reusing. I've got Cold Shot, and it's quite nice to have that rotary thing at hand, or at foot, more to the point. Then I've got a simple delay again, tape delay, and that is a spring reverb, same as the other preset again. And then I've got my amp capture there, that's a bit out, and I put a freeze in as well, which, as to whether I end up using that or not is a different matter, but I just thought it was quite a good thing, you know, play a chord and then solo over it. And I'll do some little widdly diddlies over it, which I didn't use the other day, but I put it on there anyway. And same as the other one, I use it in that view. Now I've used all the slots up here, but I shall see what I need. Maybe the freeze isn't necessary, which will free one up. But I shall see on the next solo gig, and next time I do one of these I shall include it in my gig diary and let you know how I've modified it. Anyway, there we go, that's the preset. Now let me show you a couple of solos, different sorts of solos. I'm using different pickups just to show you these two, give you a different idea of the different sounds I can get using this preset. towards the end of the gig, my wife brought the kids down. It was only down the road from where I live, this gig. And they're obsessed with Back to the Future since we went to see the Back to the Future musical in the West End in London, and they've been watching the film, been listening to the soundtrack over and over, and they wanted me to play either Power of Love or Johnny Be Good. Now, the restriction with the backing tracks, which is one of the reasons why I don't like using them, is you have to have the backing track if you're going to play the song, and I haven't got Power of Love, so it was Johnny Be Good, and I tried to do the intro for them, but they weren't listening. Anyway, the solo I did, I thought it was quite good, so I'm going to show you my terrible intro and the solo.
Okay, this is a 12 bar. This is a 12 bar in A. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up. They're not listening, are they? Are you listening? This is a 12 bar in A. Watch me for the changes. So Back to the Future, did you get that? Yeah. Alright, here we go.
Thank you very much for watching. I'm bringing out new videos, posting them every Friday, some gig diaries mainly, and there'll be some other bits and pieces in between. So yes, I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit subscribe if you did, and I'm going to leave you with this solo. This is Sultans of Swing. This is one of my favourite solos to play, so I'm going to leave you this, and if you watch to the end, you'll notice how many years ago when I wrote these backing tracks, I didn't bother fading it or putting an ending on. I just stopped, and I still haven't quite remembered where the stop is. So watch it to the end, check that out. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.